Greetings, historians. Welcome to Lore of the Dragon. So if you guys have been on Twitter for the past couple days, you either would have seen the doom and gloom version of the Spyro community because of recent events, or rather, you would have seen a design for Dark Spyro and Spyro out of a datamine for Crash on the Run. Now, this has been met with some mixed opinions. However, this video is not about the design. It's about the implications about what this might have for the world of Spyro. So, if you guys do end up talking about it in the comment section, just try to keep it respectful. Now, the data and the renders were found by two people, Infinite Extremer and Magic Nipples, who you might have heard of if you stick by the modding community. The only one to post it was Infinite Extremer, and along with the renders, he also posted the file names for these renders. The first one being character render underscore boss underscore dark Spyro underscore pose 01. And the render for Spyro himself was character render underscore boss underscore Spyro underscore pose 01. Now, in appearance, the Spyro render looks relatively the same as the reignited version, because, well, that seems to be what it's based off of. Now, the Dark Spyro, of course, for those who already have noticed it, has the same color scheme as the Dark Spyro from CTR Nitro Fueled, and what inspired that, Skylanders. Now, of course, this is a reference to each version of Dark Spyro, and, well, it could always be taken as that. But this is Lore of the Dragon. I'm going to probably think too far into this. So, for those who don't know the premise of Crash on the Run, as it will be important to what I'm going to be talking about today, the premise is that the villain, Dr. Neo Cortex, has taken villains from across the multiverse and essentially released them to fight Crash Bandicoot and his sister Coco Bandicoot. Meanwhile, the two Bandicoots have to stop these villains and send them back to where they came. Therefore, this acknowledges the multiverse much like Crash 4 and establishes it as perhaps even more of a threat than it's actually shown in Crash 4, as it could technically imply that there could be an army of one villain facing off against Crash Bandicoot. So because this render of Dark Spyro and Spyro has the word boss in it, perhaps it could indicate a boss fight between Crash Bandicoot and Spyro and or Dark Spyro. I might make a video just about that, but for now we're just going to stay focused on the topic at hand. Now, one of the main points I do want to get across is that because Spyro is now technically in Crash on the Run, this just amplifies the theory that the Spyro and Crash universes are connected, and therefore Spyro also has a multiverse, and each version of Spyro is also canon, and is just in a different universe. That opens up a lot of doors. However, this doesn't mean that the next Spyro game or any Spyro game will necessarily focus on the multiverse. It just means that in some cases that he could actually cross over with Crash Bandicoot and have a in-world excuse for it, which personally I think is pretty cool. Now, if it were to be in the same universe as Crash Bandicoot, which now also shares an entire multiverse with different versions of Crash Bandicoot, and because of that, technically Spyro would also have the same opportunity, that would mean that 4 different versions of Dark Spyro look the same, yet they're in different universes. And I have a theory about this. So, in this multiverse, perhaps there is a constant much like gravity. So it isn't particularly affected by the different versions of this multiverse. At least in the same way that a character would be. Case in point, Tawna from Crash 4. And this constant might be dark energy, or rather dark magic. Perhaps as well there could be a constant that we know as magic, and each one is branching out into various parts of the multiverse. And now, because of this constant, perhaps it is leaking into these various universes and corrupting these different versions of Spyro in this case. Now, as well in Crash, there is actually a dimension that essentially is the reverse of the normal dimension. So there's a dark Crash, dark Coco, all this crazy stuff. Perhaps there's something similar for Spyro. Perhaps there could have been a universe that Spyro belonged to that was overrun by this dark magic, and perhaps that's where this version of Dark Spyro comes from. Now that's getting into wild theory territory, but I'm going to take it back a bit. So for each version of Dark Spyro that shares this black and silver color scheme, this dark magic would corrupt them in various ways. In the case of Skylanders Academy Spyro, it was through Strikor. Through the Crash on the Run version, we don't quite know, but perhaps it could have been something similar to, well, what happened in Skylanders Academy, or it just could be that it comes from a dark realm corrupted by this dark energy. Now, the outlier to all of this is the Legend of Spyro version of, well, Dark Spyro. Now, I have a couple theories about this. Perhaps the reason why he looks different and perhaps acts different than the rest of the Dark Spyros is because how he was corrupted was unique. And perhaps it also has to do with the type of purple dragon he is, or rather, what type of Spyro he is. For those who don't know, the Legend of Spyro has a rather unique take on, well, Spyro. He is referred to as the Purple Dragon of Legend, and is said to have a power that can perhaps outmatch stars, this being the element of Aether. Now, this perhaps as well could be part of the constant of normal magic across the multiverse, but that might be a different video. At least if this multiverse idea were to be true. So perhaps at first glance, this dark magic would essentially just mix with this version of Aether and, well, transform Spyro into a unique version of Dark Spyro. However, I don't think that's the case, as if it is a universal constant that Aether and this dark Aether, or rather dark magic and magic element, were to be stretched across the entire multiverse, then every version of Dark Spyro would look the same. Therefore, I propose another idea. So, Ignitus in A New Beginning says that there is a dark realm beyond convexity, as convexity is an airlock dimension between the Dragon Realms and the Dark Realms of the Legend of Spyro. So, this dark energy, when it entered into the universe of the Legend of Spyro, it was attracted more to the dimension of the Dark Realms rather than the Dragon Realms. And Aether itself, upon the entry of dark magic, was corrupted. Therefore, it was a rather unnatural take on Aether, or rather, dark Aether. Perhaps it could have been sort of an in-between. And because of its unnatural nature, and perhaps the way it was corrupted, it transformed Dark Spyro and also Malefor into a unique version of a dark dragon. Now, if this dark energy were to also be attracted to various pockets of dark energy as well, like the Dark Realms, perhaps this also could have been the same for the Shadow Realms in the original timeline, if that were to also be part of the multiverse. Which would, of course, give a reason why in the original timeline there is no Dark Spyro. Now, of course, Dark Spyro wasn't a thing at the time. However, from a lore standpoint, that could actually be the reason why we couldn't particularly see one. Now, with Spyro entering into the Shadow Realm, perhaps that could have been something different, but perhaps it could have been prolonged exposure would have turned him into Dark Spyro. However, the fact that he wasn't in there for a really long time made sure that he wasn't going to turn into that. Now, I imagine as well the Sorcerer might also be a side effect of that. However, perhaps there could have been a way that he was able to control this power. Or perhaps because of the fact that Spyro and the Sorcerer were rather special dragons in the original timeline, perhaps it could have been also a weird effect, much like the Legend of Spyro, where because they were a different type of purple dragon, or rather different type of dragon, it didn't necessarily affect them in the same way. And now that I think about it, it could be because of the concentration of magic within Spyro in the original timeline, at the end of it anyway, and the Legend of Spyro version of Spyro, that it, well, corrupts them, but not in the same way, because it's almost like white blood cells fighting an infection. If you have a lot of white blood cells, you're going to have a better time fighting off said infection. However, this infection would be a dark element, and the white blood cells would be normal magic, and essentially they're just clashing within Spyro's body. Therefore, perhaps creating this weird version of Dark Spyro. While the normal version of Dark Spyro doesn't necessarily have that because the dark energy overwhelmed his body instead. But that's really just a giant theory. Anyway, that is going to be it for me. You guys can go into the comment section below and talk about it. Or rather, if you guys want to talk about it in a live chat, you can go join my Discord. The link to that will be down in the description below, along with the link to Infinite Extremers and Magic Nipple's Twitter. Anyway, that is going to be it. With the Discord plug out of the way, the only thing I really have to say is, if you guys want to stay updated on videos and progress, you guys can go onto my Twitter, or rather you can stick onto my community tab where I'll be trying to post updates to stuff. Or rather, if you guys just want to stay up to date on stuff when things come out, as in videos, theories, speculation, etc., you guys can just stick around Lore of the Dragon. But that's going to be it. I hope to see you all in the next lore or speculation video. Stay safe, historians.